What is up, guys? We are back at it again. In last video, what I did was I compared salaries of California nurses to Texas nurses, and I showed you that if you are a nurse in California, you are going to be left with so much more money after your income taxes are deducted, as well as your mortgage payments if you decide to own a house, or your rent if you decide to rent an apartment or a house. And one thing that I did see in the comments was that I didn't address how poorly some of these cities were ran, and maybe it's not the smartest decision for somebody to make if they decide to move to one of these cities, because maybe it's crime ridden, maybe it's full of pollution. One of the commenters said that it is one of the cities in Texas, I believe it was either Port Arthur or Beaumont, one of those Texas cities, is full of pollution, so much pollution that it actually has increased the cancer rates to people who live in those cities. So what I would say is, if you are interested in moving to one of the locations that I mentioned in my videos, you should do your due diligence before you decide to move there. What I typically address is the places that pay nurses the most amount of money after they factor in the biggest expenses, which are their taxes and their home or their rent. So in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the best and worst cities for nurses to either own or rent. And what I mean by that is, if you decide to own a house and you buy it, you put 20% down, you are going to have a different cost of living than somebody who decides to rent a house or an apartment. And there was an article that I read recently that talked about how in, I believe it's something like 30 cities, 34 cities, it actually makes more sense for you to rent instead of own. And let me see if I can actually pull it up so I can show you guys what that article talks about. It was a bank rate study that went over 50 of the largest metro areas and found that renting is actually more affordable than it is to own. So here are the metro areas with the smallest gaps between monthly renting and buying costs, which means if you were to rent an apartment and own a home, these are the cities that have the smallest gaps between the payments. So for example, you may live in a place like Detroit, Michigan, and the typical cost of rent there is $13.95. The typical cost to own there is $14.23. So it's only a 2% buy to rent ratio. And these are the cities with the smallest gaps between renting and buying. However, if you keep scrolling down, you're going to find where it's actually much more expensive to buy than it is to rent. And the first city that we're going to be looking at is San Francisco. So San Francisco, Oakland, and Berkeley are going to be the places that you're going to find that it costs 180% more to own than it does to rent. And if you work your way down this list, you're going to see that California has one of the top 2 cities or metropolitan areas in this list, or at least in the top 5, right? So you have San Jose, Sunnyvale, and Santa Clara are up next at 162% more to own than it is to rent. Then you have Seattle, Tacoma, Bellevue, followed by Salt Lake City, Utah, and Austin, Round Rock, and Georgetown, Texas. All right, so let me just give you an example of what it looks like in San Francisco. So if you're going to rent in San Francisco, the typical rent cost is going to be $3,024 a month. To buy in the same location, you are going to typically spend about $8,486 per month just to own a house. That is more than twice as much to own a house than it costs to rent an apartment or a house. This is the article I was talking about, and that is some of the stuff that I like to address in my videos. I typically address the cost to own or rent because it's going to be one of your largest expenses. So this is the spreadsheet that I went over in the last video when I compared Texas to California. And I showed you that the majority of the cities that are going to leave you with the most amount of money are going to be located in California. Now, I'm not going to show you, all of the details that I had to do, or all of the research that I had to do, all of the data that I had to scrape, and all of the websites that I had to go to in order to get these calculations, because I already did that in the last video. So in this video, I'm only going to be talking about the salaries, how much taxes you're paying in these cities, and how much the home prices are, what your mortgage payments look like, how much you have left over after these mortgage payments and your taxes, and how much you have left over after your rent payments and your taxes. So let me just go back to the other spreadsheet and show you something, okay? I'm going to sort this by how much you're going to have left over if you own, right? So leftover annually, as you can see right here, like, let me just zoom in a little bit, right? You can sort it by any one of these values. I'm going to sort it by leftover annually if owning. And you're going to see right here on the left hand side. Now I had to zoom in a lot, right? Because I want you guys to be able to see all of this. So if you look over here, you're going to see that California, I'm going to keep scrolling down. California is in the top 3 right over here. And again, oh, sorry, my bad. This is actually worse, right? Because we're ascending here. We're going from worst to best. And you're going to see that you're going to have, if you're even able to afford to buy a house on your income, which I've mentioned this before, and every time I make a short video on Instagram, people don't understand what I'm talking about. Like, they automatically say, who is even going to qualify for a house that costs this much money, right? $1.7 million, $2 million with the income of a nurse? It's not going to happen. I know that. That's the point. If you are living in any one of these cities, there is no way you're going to be able to buy a house that costs this much unless you inherited some money, right? But if you're even able to afford a house in this income bracket, the amount that you're going to have left over after you pay your taxes on your income is going to be negative $75,000 in a place like Santa Barbara, California. Let me just go over the descending values, because this is what I really wanted to talk about before, right? So in the last video, this is what I mentioned. The top cities, if you compare California to Texas, that are going to leave you with the most amount of money are going to be in California. And I'm going to scroll down so you guys can see how many cities are actually in California before you actually get to Texas. So I'm going to go down. You have Redding, Vallejo, Modesto, Oakland, Sacramento, Flint, Fairfield, Arden Arcade, Stockton, Watsonville, Yuba City, Detroit, Michigan, right? Who wants to live there? And who wants to live in a lot of these other California cities? Not many people, right? But these are the cities that are going to leave you with the most amount of money if you decide to own a home. Fresno, California, Camden, New Jersey, and then we have Port Arthur, Texas. That is why I like to point these things out. A lot of people talk about how if you move to Texas, you're going to have so much more money left over. But they don't factor a lot of the other things that come into play, because you may live in a city like Houston and you'll actually end up with a lot less money than if you were to move to a city like San Antonio, for example, right? So that's why I like to break things down to a microscopic level. Like when you go straight down to the city level, that's when you can find out if you are going to be making a lot more money and if you're going to end up paying a lot more money in cost of living. So let's go back. I'm going to show you now what the best cities are for, and again, I made the video before, so if you wanted to know what you have left over, it's in that video, right? So you can just go back to that video. But let's go over here and let's talk about now which cities will leave you with the most amount of money in every state if you were to own. I sorted this from best to worst, and as you can see, Redding, California is going to be number 1. So Monica and I, we live in Sacramento, California. We specifically chose Sacramento, California because it's the closest to the Bay Area. We have an international airport over here. Literally the I-5 and the I-80 run across Sacramento, and it felt to us like it was as close to a city life as we could get to New York City. I mean, it's far from it, but it's the closest we could get to it. We lived in Roseville before we moved to Sacramento, so now we're in Sacramento. So let's go back to this. We have Redding, California. It's a more mountainous area, and the median salary, all these salaries come from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The median salary for nurses in this city is $135,220. The net annual salary after taxes, $102,000. You're paying $32,800 in taxes. The home prices are relatively low. This is another thing I like to talk about. In California, not all homes cost $1 million. You could find a house that costs less than $500,000. In Sacramento, for example, the median home price is about $480,000, right? Not many people realize that. And a lot of people who are watching this video who may live in Sacramento and say that is not true, they are probably looking at homes that are way above their price range or homes they can't even afford. Because, I look at Zillow every single day. Monica and I, we do it all the time. And one thing that Zillow does is that it looks at the market median home prices. So it takes the median amount, the value of the homes that have sold in every single city in the US, and it actually sells this data. So if you wanted to access it, you could purchase it, or you could just do a simple Google search and type in the city that you're interested in, and then type median home prices Zillow, and you'll be able to find the median home price in your particular area. So let's go back, and I'm going to show you now how much you're going to have left over if you own $66,731. This is in Redding, California. I'm not going to go over every single city because I want to go and talk about, the best cities for people who want to rent, for nurses who want to rent, the worst cities for nurses who want to own, and the worst cities for nurses who want to rent. So I'm just going to quickly scroll down so you guys can see which cities end up in the top of the chart and again, I'm comparing all of the cities within these states to show you which city is the best. So the first one we have is Flint, Michigan. And again, I just want to let you guys know that I know this. You've mentioned it before. Who wants to live in Flint, Michigan? Who wants to live in Camden, New Jersey? Who wants to live in Port Arthur, Texas? I'm just telling you which cities are going to pay you the most amount of money and leave you with the most amount of money. This list you can go through if you want to. Now this one you can actually sort. Let me just minimize it a little bit. You can sort through every single state you want. So let's say, for example, I just want to look at California. You can do that. And you can go and look at in descending order to see which city is going to leave you with the most amount of money, because now you can compare many cities within one state. So that is a list for something else. I'm talking about specifically the cities that are going to leave you with the most amount of money. I don't want to keep sounding like a broken record, but I just want to let you guys know because I don't want to hear it in the comments. Okay. All right. So let's go down. Port Arthur, Texas, Hartford, Connecticut, Fairbanks, so on and so forth. You guys can look at this list, scroll all the way down. It's included in the spreadsheet. All right. Vermont, South Burlington, Vermont is going to be the worst, because in this city, even though it's going to be the one that's going to leave you with the most amount of money in this specific state, you're only going to be left with $18,667. That's not much. That's not much to live on. This is before you even consider your other costs. Let's say you want to pay, buy gasoline for your car. You want to pay for your insurance on your car. You have an auto payment. You have groceries you need to pay for. You have utilities. All these other things have to be factored in. So what I like to do is typically factor in like $2,000 additional per month, for living expenses. And that's one thing that I may include in a future iteration of the spreadsheet, or I may allow you to even input how much more you want to spend on a monthly basis in your cost of living. All right, let's go back to the next sheet, which goes over the best cities for renters. And this one's different. I like this one because a lot of people assume that they should rent or buy in order to, have that home continue to grow equity, and so they can save money in their taxes, their property taxes, when they file their taxes at the end of the year. There's so many different ways in which homeowners can benefit from owning a house, and a lot of people assume that that's the best way to invest your money as opposed to renting. And that's why I want to include the cost of renting into the spreadsheet, so you guys can see that you're actually going to end up with more money in your pocket at the end of the year, at the end of the month, if you decide to rent. So let's look at these cities here, and I'm going to sort this. Let's see by how much you're going to have left over if you decide to rent. So left over annually if renting. So sort column. I believe this is the one. Okay, let's see. All right, which one's number one? Oakland, California. Who would have thought, right? And I know there's going to be a lot of people in the comments saying, who in the world wants to live in Oakland? Believe it or not, there are a lot of people that do want to live in Oakland. I had a coworker who left Oakland because he thought the cost of living was too high. And he came to Sacramento, he bought a duplex, and mind you, he's working for Kaiser Permanente. That coworker moved back to Oakland because he missed it so much. So there are plenty of people that want to live in Oakland. However, Oakland does have one of the highest crime rates in the entire US. And this spreadsheet does cover that in, let me see if I can just show you. The other part of the spreadsheet does do that. So if you guys want to look at the crime rate, you're free to do that. It's also in there. Right over here on the right hand side, it actually shows the violent crime and the property crime. And you guys can take a look at that. The higher the number, the closer it is to 100, the worse the crime rate. So you can look at that information yourself. So let's go back. Here we are in the best cities for renters. Oakland, California. You're making $173,510 per year. This is a median annual salary. That means there are nurses that are making way more than this and nurses that are making less. So if you're the type of nurse that you want to pick up, let's say, a couple of overtime shifts here or there, you don't have to kill yourself for it, but you can easily make $200,000, $250,000, $300,000 as a nurse working in this city. The taxes that you're paying, $44,000 a year. Home prices in this area. I know there's going to be people saying you cannot find a house for $575,000. I just want to prove you guys wrong. Okay, because I get this all the time. It happens every single time. Okay, so let's go. Oakland, California, homes. And I know we're looking at the rent, how much you have left over if you rent, but let me just show you the home prices, right? This is all Oakland right over here. Now, I'm going to sort it for you guys from low to high. Okay, scroll down, right? 260,000. You can go as low as you want and as high as you want. So look at these homes, right? 215,000. These are small, 633 square feet. Yeah, it's really small. I know that. But you can find something that is still under $1 million in Oakland. I'm scrolling, right? I'm still scrolling. If you're willing to be frugal for a short period of time, you can do this, guys, for like, let's say 5-10 years, right? Just buy a home, you know, that's relatively affordable and make a lot of money in this area. Save all that money, invest all that money, rent out your house, rent out a room in your house, do whatever it takes so you guys can save more money, and then you can move to somewhere that you would see yourself living in for the rest of your life. But again, this is just for renters. We're talking about renters here, so let's keep going here, right? Because your monthly mortgage payment is going to be $5,700 if you buy a home. That's $757,000. So let's keep going, and look at that. You'll have $60,000 over here if you decide to own. Let's keep going. Look at the rent, $2,275. That's how much the typical rent is. Now, what Zillow does here in this case also is it takes all of the room sizes. Let's say you want to rent a 3-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment. It'll take all of those and it'll give you the median, right? So the median here is $2,275. Your annual rent payments are $27,300 and you'll have $102,000 left over. That's after you pay for your rent. So if you have, let's say, $102,000 and you end up spending $2,000 additional dollars for utilities and bills every single month because you're a frugal person, right? $2,000 times 12, that's $24,000. So if you're making $102,000 and you spend an additional, if you're left with $102,000 after your rent and you spend an additional $24,000, so you're left with $78,000, right? $78,000, and you divide that by 12, that's $6,500 every single month that you're left with if you decide to rent in this city. Now look at the next closest city, $62,000. That's the beauty of living and working in certain parts of California. What's the next city? Albany, Oregon. Then we have Spokane, Washington, Honolulu, Hawaii. Yes, believe it or not, your typical rent is going to be $2,700 in that city per month, and you're going to be left with $58,000. Now let's go back. Let's go down to which one is the lowest, best city for nurses who want to rent. And again, it's going to be in Vermont. It's Burlington, Vermont this time, and you are going to be left with $33,000 a year. And remember, if you're spending an additional $22,000, you're only going to be left with $9,000 a year. You're going to be stretched very thin in Vermont. So think about that if you're deciding to work as a nurse in that state. You're going to have to pick up a lot of overtime. And remember, this is just the best city to rent. Let's go now to worst cities for owners. If you're an owner or you want to own in any one of these cities across the country, I'm going to talk about how bad it can be in some of these. And you're going to be surprised to see some of these on the list. And I'm going to show you something that I was very surprised by that it's not on here, but I'm going to go to my other list to show you this right here. Santa Barbara, California. The median annual salary is $109,000. That's how much you're going to be bringing home before taxes. After taxes, you have $85,000. The home prices in this area, $1.7 million. Your typical monthly mortgage payment is $13,398. If you can even afford to buy a house here, which you won't be able to, But if you can, the amount that you're going to have left over annually is $75,729. You'll have $29,000 left over every year if you decide to rent. It's still very expensive even to rent, because the typical monthly rent is going to cost you $4,669. And I can attest to this because actually my daughter, her boyfriend, is currently looking to rent an apartment with his roommates that he is dorming with right now. And they're going to pay about $5,000 a month for their rent. So this is very typical. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, Bellevue, Washington, Ocean City, New Jersey, Marco Island, Florida, Boulder, Colorado, New York, New York, if you guys were wondering, Austin, Texas, if you guys were wondering. There you go. Let me just keep going. We have Anchorage, Alaska. Now, how much are you going to be left with if you decide to own? $46,403 is not as bad as what you saw previously, right? All the way up here where you have Santa Barbara, California. It's negative $75,000 a year. Now, something that I wanted to mention. Let's go back to my other list in my dashboard. Now, in this dashboard, you guys saw Marco Island, Florida. So if I click on Florida here, you're going to see something very interesting. There are going to be cities over here that if you want to own, many cities in Florida, that if you want to own, you're actually going to be left with very little money. It's not just Florida. Let's go over all of them. There's so many. Yeah, here they are. Okay, there's 3 cities in California at the top 5, actually more. There's California, Santa Barbara, California, Sunnyvale, California, Carlsbad, Bellevue, Santa Clara, Ocean City, Marco Island, Boulder, and Franklin. All of these cities over here are going to leave you with negative digits. Negative. You'll have no money left over. And this is before you even consider the utilities and all your other bills that you're going to be paying for. Let's go now to the worst cities for renters. If you are someone who wants to rent, do not consider these cities because you're going to be left with very little to no money whatsoever if you decide to rent in these cities. The first one, Marco Island. In Marco Island, Florida, you will be paying an average monthly rent of $7,500. That's insane. That's ridiculous. But there aren't that many places available to rent in Marco Island, and that's probably why this is so skewed towards the higher end. So when I looked at it previously, there weren't that many places. So I guess the ones that are available are being rented out in like mansions or something. Okay, the annual rent payments are going to be $90,000 a year. You'll have negative $26,000 left over here. Then we have Williamsport, Pennsylvania, Hilton Head, South Carolina, Durham, New Hampshire, and you can just look on the right hand side, right? At least you're not in the negatives yet here before you consider your utilities and your other costs. Because once you do, you know if you're spending $2,000 per month, you're going to be in the negative in every single one of these cities. But let's keep going down. California, Santa Barbara, California, Lahaina, Hawaii, Scottsdale, Arizona, Allentown, New Jersey. I'm going to go over the big cities. The Woodlands in Texas. Let me just show you what that one looks like. You'll have $31,893 left over if you decide to rent in the Woodlands. And again, you're only going to have about $6,000 left over if you consider your utilities and all of the other bills you may have to pay, which amount to, like, let's say $2,000 a month. You also have Warwick, Massachusetts. In Georgia, it's Gainesville. In New York, it's Ithaca. Actually, if you decide to rent, don't move to Ithaca. Here you'll have $35,000 left over. Carson City, Nevada. In Carson City, Nevada, you'll be left with $38,000. All right, now I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. And here it is, Fairbanks, Alaska. You're going to be left with $56,513. And the reason why we have Fairbanks here is because Alaska actually doesn't have that many major cities. So I'm going to just go back to the spreadsheet at the beginning to show you what I mean. At least not many major cities that the Bureau of Labor Statistics collects data for. Yeah. So you have Anchorage or Fairbanks. Those are the only 2 cities that the Bureau of Labor Statistics collects data for. So if you guys found this information valuable, you can access the spreadsheet by going to our website and purchasing it from there. But I just want to mention that if you want this spreadsheet along with every single spreadsheet that I sell on our website, you can just join our Nurses to Riches Accelerator program. In that program, I give you access to these spreadsheets for free, or actually it's included. I shouldn't say it's free. You should go onto our website and look at these programs. The lowest tier will allow you to just get access to one of the spreadsheets. And let me just show you which spreadsheet that is, just so you guys can see how valuable that spreadsheet is going to be if you're looking to move to California, because there's a lot of people who have reached out to me who say that they've always dreamed of working in California because they know that the pay is so high. Well, let me just show you. This is one of the spreadsheets that's included in that program, or you can purchase it on the website separately, right? If you purchase the program, the lowest tier is $149. Depending on when you're looking at it, this is the sale that is going on, $149. And this is the spreadsheet that I include along with steps on how to move to California. That's one of that spreadsheets. If you decide to purchase the pro tier gives you access to this spreadsheet as well as all of the other spreadsheets. This one included, and I have several others. So in this one, you can compare 7 different professions, right? But I have another spreadsheet that allows you to compare your nursing profession with a nursing profession to physicians, to radiology technicians, to MRI technologists and sonographers. The list goes on. Pharmacists, it's all in there, right? So I include that as well. Plus I give you access to so many other things. But the tier that most of our members have purchased is the VIP tier, because in the VIP tier, I give you very specific information if you're looking to work in California, but a hospital like Kaiser Permanente to be more specific. That's the hospital that I work in. I make $103 an hour as a staff nurse working in the emergency department, and my salary is going to go up in January. Monica is a night shift nurse and she works telemetry, but she's per diem and she makes $133 an hour. Next year, she's actually going to go up to $143 an hour. That's how crazy the salaries are. And I haven't even mentioned the benefits. I talk about the benefits in other videos. You guys can look those up in our other videos. But if you guys want access to all of this, just go to our website, just watch our videos. We have all of that in this channel and our website. And if you want me to talk about anything else, please feel free to mention it in the comments below. What did you think about these results? Do you agree with them? Do you find them interesting? If not, let us know in the comments. If you do, let us know in the comments and subscribe to this channel. See you guys on the next one.